Hello everybody, I am Tom and you are watching me play Baldur's Gate 3. So in today's video, I thought it would be a good idea, before I go into make videos on specific classes and kind of go in depth, it's probably a good idea to make a video going over the basics of gameplay. Terms, mechanics to know for people who are new to cRPGs and or Dungeons & Dragons more generally. But be forewarned, this video is going to be very basic as possible so as to be as thorough as possible. My aim is to have this video as a guide to point to if I or any of you have someone asking about a specific aspect of the game that they're unsure of. So you can just point them back here and it'll explain everything for them. At the end of the video, I'll have an example fight from very early on in the game. It's around the very early part of Act 1 is this fight. Those who have played Early Access will know the fight I'm talking about when I get to it. But so as to show no spoilers, I will put a warning just before that starts. So if you want to learn about all the basics but don't actually want to see any of the actual in-game gameplay, you'll be able to jump out before that happens. But I want to show that example fight so you can get an idea of how these concepts work in-game, as well as just me kind of explaining them mechanically through a description. There will be timestamps below so you can skip to an area of particular interest to you, but to begin, let us start with the most basic terms and concepts in the character creator. So we're here in the character creator, we have our little human fighter here. A couple of things I want to go over initially is first things first is ability scores, and also a small note, but a very important note. Whenever you have something that gives you like a little hoverable tooltip, you see a little T to inspect. I didn't realize this for the first bunch of hours I played this game, but if you hit T, it will actually hold the little tooltip out so you can re-hover anything in there that you want to know about. But moving forward, we have ability scores. As you can see here, these are what you would expect as general stats from other games. We have strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. It is worth noting that strength and dexterity can be used for weapons depending on the weapon type. Most melee weapons are strength-based. Most ranged weapons are dexterity-based. There is a few exceptions to both of these. For instance, there are a few weapons that are finesse weapons, quote-unquote, where you can use your dexterity rather than your strength to actually determine whether you hit and how much damage you do. These are things like rapiers, daggers, short swords. For the most part, it follows a pretty logical conclusion for what can be used with dex. Intelligence, in wisdom, and charisma are all spellcasting modifiers. If you're a wizard, you'll be using intelligence, for instance. If you're a cleric, you'll be using wisdom. If you are a sorcerer, you'll be using charisma. You have a star above your quote-unquote most important attribute. Fighter, for instance, it's given me strength. As I said, there are dex weapons that you can use, so you can be a dex fighter, so that doesn't necessarily follow, but for the most part, strength is going to be your go-to as a fighter. If you play a mage class, so if I go wizard, you can see it's put the little star over intelligence because intelligence is what I use to cast my spells. Same thing if I go to cleric, it puts the little star over wisdom because wisdom is what I need. But generally speaking, it will show you your most important stat by putting a little star over it, which will describe what it is. Now, the other thing we have to go over is the difference between an ability score, which we have here, 16, 16, 14, 10, 11, 10, and the modifier, which is just to the left of it here. We have +3, +3, +2, +0, +0, +0. So the way this works is that really the modifier is the more important thing. This is what actually goes into all of your ability checks. It goes into your chance to hit, all that kind of thing. The best way to describe it, let me actually use the T function that I was talking about before. We can go into ability checks. So test whether an action is successful based on a dice roll, your ability modifier, any bonuses, and the check's difficulty class. So if we go into ability modifier, a bonus or penalty based on an ability, and then the difficulty class, a number that must be matched or exceeded. To succeed, rolling a 1 always fails, and rolling a 20 always succeeds. So a difficulty class is how difficult the thing you are trying to do is. For instance, if we go into athletics here, I'll go into this a bit deeper in a second. This is what a skill is, essentially. But athletics is your chance to climb over a structure, how long you can swim for, things like that. So if you're trying to climb a wall, for instance, the game in the background would roll an athletics check. You have to hit a particular difficulty class that the game will set depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to climb a vertical wall, it'll probably be a relatively high difficulty. If you're trying to climb up a slope, it'll be relatively easy. All right, so next up we have proficiencies. So you have a proficiency bonus, and this is a bonus that is added to your attack rolls, ability checks, if you are proficient with a weapon, tool, or skill. Proficient, for those who are unaware of what the word means, is essentially that something you are trained in using. You know how to use it well. So, in the case of a skill, what this means is you have this little bonus. This bonus will go up as you level up, so you get a +1 when you reach level 5, you'll also get another +1 when you reach level 9, but this just gets added on top of any ability that you're using. So, as we were talking about before with athletics, you can see here that my ability modifier is a 3, but my athletics gives me a +5. The reason that is because I am proficient with athletics. So since I am proficient with the skill, this means that I get my proficiency bonus as well as my base from the strength. If you're proficient with a weapon, you are more likely to hit with that weapon. So when you roll your attack roll, you add your proficiency bonus to your chance to hit. It doesn't get added to the damage, but it does get added to your chance to hit. So you will hit more often if you're using a weapon with which you are proficient. It is also worth noting that Baldur's Gate 3 added a few extra things with proficiency. You also get a extra little attack that is based off your weapon that you can use once per short rest, generally speaking. As for armor, if you're proficient with armor, that means that you can wear it without taking any penalty. So ordinarily, if you're wearing armor that you are not proficient with, for starters, if you're a spellcasting class, you just cannot cast any of your spells if you're wearing armor that you're not proficient with. Additionally, if you are trying to make an attack roll, so just going up and hitting someone with a sword, and you're not proficient in the armor you're wearing, you actually have disadvantage on the attacks. I actually have to explain what disadvantaged is. If you are particularly likely to succeed at something, the game will give you advantage. What this means is instead of rolling 1 d20 and then adding your bonuses and seeing whether you pass, you roll 2 d20s and you take whichever one is higher. Alternatively, you can have disadvantage. What this means is the opposite. You roll 2 d20s and you take whichever is the lower. So if you're wearing heavy armor and you're not proficient in heavy armor, for example, all of your attacks will be at disadvantage, which is huge. You have to be proficient in armor to wear it, otherwise it completely neuters you in combat. Alright, so we're back to the abilities page. Next, we can go over ability checks. I kind of went over these before with giving athletics as an example, but you can actually expand all of these except constitution because it has no skills associated with it. But each of these skills is associated with a particular attribute point. Generally speaking, these are based, as I said, off your modifier. So you can go up and we can see we got a +3 in dexterity, so my acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth all have +3 in them. However, you can be proficient in these skills, denoted on this screen by this little dot right here. You can see I'm proficient with athletics and religion. So I have a +0 in all my intelligence scores except religion where I get a +2. I'm moving down to wisdom. I'll actually put wisdom down to 9, just so I can show off a negative attribute as well. We have -1 in all of these except insight because I'm proficient, so it adds a +2, gives me a +1 rather than a -1. And then charisma, same thing, I'm proficient with intimidation, therefore I get the +2 in intimidation, but deception, performance, and persuasion are all +0. So the main thing that this goes off is your modifier, and then it gets an additional bonus if you're proficient in that particular ability check. So next, we want to talk about saving throws. So generally speaking, a saving throw is going to be, as it says here, determines whether a target resists a spell or condition. A lot of this is going to be spells. If a target tries to hit you with a fireball, for example, your chance to not get hit by that fireball relies on you being able to dodge out of the way, so you have to roll a dexterity saving throw. And what this is literally just your ability modifier. So if you make a dexterity saving throw, in our case we have a +3, so you'd roll the d20 and add 3. However, you can also have proficiencies in certain saving throws. As you can see here, for fighter, we have a proficiency with strength saving throws as well as constitution saving throws. And the last thing we want to go over with ability scores is your armor class. So we go to dexterity here, right here, also affects your armor class. The higher your armor class, the harder you are to hit. That is the most base level explanation of what armor class does, but essentially, if you're wearing no armor whatsoever, you're just wearing clothes, you have 10 plus your dexterity modifier, and that is how much armor class you have. And then depending on the armor you're wearing, that will go up. Light armor, I think, is 12 plus your dexterity modifier. Medium armor is like 13 or 14, usually, plus up to 2 from your dexterity modifier. So if I'm wearing medium armor on my fighter here, for instance, I have 16 dex, so I get +3 from the ability score, but only 2 of that will go towards my armor class. And then finally you have heavy armor, which generally speaking, if you're going like full plate, it gives you 18 to your armor class, but you don't get any bonus from your dexterity because you're in heavy armor, so being able to dodge out of the way is a lot harder, so you don't actually get the bonus for that. But it is heavy armor, so it's a lot harder to hit you in the first place. That is the last thing I wanted to talk about before we moved on to background. So as you start the game, you can select a background. They're down here. They will be different in the full release, once again. But going through these, the only thing these really give you, other than flavor for your character, is 2 proficiencies with skills. But as you can read here, you're an expert in manipulation, prone to exaggeration, and more than happy to profit from it. Bending the truth and turning allies against each other will lead to greater success down the road. These are all relatively different. There's a bunch of different ones that you can choose from, and they give you 2 proficiencies for each of them. So you can get more, obviously, just from your class, but as just a kind of base background, you'll get this. The additional thing the background does is if you kind of lean into your background and kind of role play it well, as it were, during game, you'll get inspiration. And what this is, essentially, is a chance to re-roll a dice. So if you fail something and you really want to succeed at it, if you have inspiration, you can spend that inspiration and then re-roll the dice and take the next result. So it helps considerably. So role play your way away. It also works with your companions as well. If you role play your companions, it is a party-wide thing that will accumulate and you can use it to re-roll your dice. Next up, we can have a quick look at race. I already did a full video on race and a breakdown of all the different ones, so you can go and have a look at that. I will link it up in the top right corner. It'll also be in the description, and I'll pin a comment too, why not? Choosing your race will give you a bunch of different benefits. It's usually a bunch of proficiencies, as well as an increase in scores. Having said that, the ability score increases are being a bit more streamlined by Larian, so you can do these ability scores wherever you want in the full release. It's not actually race dependent. But moving on, we also have the class. So your class is your most impactful choice. It changes how you play the game in a pretty significant way. So we have Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. I'll skip describing these now because I'm going to do a video on them later, probably coming out in the next couple of days, that it's going to go kind of a bit in depth on the overview of what each of these classes are and kind of their identity, but I'll do that in a separate video, so I won't cover it here. A few features that are easier to show in-game than they are out-of-game. There's no real spoilers in this section yet, we're just going to be showing the hotbar and a few other things as we go in. Alright, so now we're in-game. I want to show off a few settings to begin with, if you go into the options. Some of these pages may be different in the full release of the game, but I assume the options themselves are still going to be there. So the first thing we want to go over is in the gameplay tab. You can go down a bit, you can change your system of measurement from imperial to metric or metric to imperial. I think by default it's metric, which makes sense because Larian is not an American studio. I changed mine to imperial because I play a lot of D&D and all of the D&D source books are in feet rather than meters, so I'm used to movement in feet when it comes to like kind of cRPGs, which is weird because, you know, I don't really use feet, generally speaking. It's weird. Australians, generally speaking, the only time we use feet is when we're talking about the height of people or the height of aircraft, but we don't really use it any other time, which is kind of weird. So next up we have karmic dice. So what these do, I actually have these turned off because I like randomness. However, what karmic dice do is essentially they make it so that it cheats, essentially. They make it so that you're never always hitting 20s over and over and over again. You're also not always hitting 1s over and over and over again. It almost curates your rolls a bit better so that on average, you're getting like middling rolls rather than always winning or always losing just by pure randomness. I like pure randomness, so I leave karmic dice on. But moving down a bit, we also have the lock mouse to window and edge panning. I like both of these. Next we have key bindings, do whatever you want. Video settings, do whatever fits your game. Audio settings, same thing, set to preference. And finally, we have the interface. A couple of things here that I always turn on is north-facing map. I hate games that have rotating maps. I hate it with a passion. I don't know how anyone likes it. If you do in the comments, explain to me why that is a thing. I hate it. I've actually heard that there's a difference between men and women too. I don't know if this is a thing, but the way the brain works, women are better at facing the map in the direction that they're facing, whereas men tend to like it in one way and then they orient themselves on the map. I don't know, it's very strange. Next up we have show pings, you can leave that as it is. Show tutorials I have turned off. It is probably worth having these turned on, which I think they are by default, if you are new to the game. Next up we have dialogue options. So show speaker, all this does, as you can see in the little picture there, it just adds a little name to who's speaking. I find that useful. Show subtitles, I obviously always want them on, and this here is a little background. I find it easier to read when the background is there. You can change the opacity of the background, and you can change the size of the text. You can have it super big if you really want. I find around 50 is good for regular text size for conversations, and then overhead text is just when you're out in the world and they say things. Same thing, I like to have a text background, but I don't really care about text size. It can be very, very small here. That is fine. And finally, we have the bottom bar options. So this is all going to be to taste, obviously, but generally speaking, I hate the way that it adds all of the items I have to the bar, but every single individual type of item you can change however you like. As you can see here, you can make it so only potions are added to your bar. You can make it so only scrolls are added to your bar. You can do a bunch of things here. But generally speaking, the only thing I like getting added to my bar are spells, and I also want those spells removed when I no longer know them. It's just the way that I work. If I want to put an item on the bar, I'll put it on there manually. I don't want everything thrown on there. I assume I'm in the majority here, but maybe not. Maybe people like having everything accessible on the hotbar. Who knows? But they're the main ones that I think are a good takeaway. Alright, we're back. So I actually missed this one as well. This here where we have show full tooltips. What this actually means is for all of the regular overlays, for all of the spells, all of your skills, your weapon attacks, all that kind of thing, all of them by default are they're truncated. So they're not the full thing. You can open that by holding Alt. If you hold Alt with it up, it will show you the whole one. I would suggest that rather than having it when pinned, I would just turn it to always on. So always have the tooltip on. That way, when you're playing, you can hover over something. Chances are, if you want to see the tooltip, you want to see the whole tooltip, not half of it. So I just turn this to just always be on full. All right, so we are back in the game. I want to talk about ubiquitous actions. So these are actions that everybody has. You have jump, shove, dip, hide, throw, improvised melee weapon, help, dash, and disengage. Also your attack action, as well as your proficiency attack weapon. So we have concussive smash here because she's using a mace and she is proficient with maces. So you see proficiency unlocks concussive smash. You can use this once per short rest. All of these things are things that everybody can do. It's not class specific, it isn't race specific, anything like that. So for starters, we'll go over the easy things first. Jump. It's pretty simple. You can do this in combat and it will take, in fact, we can show this by going into turn-based mode. In turn-based mode, you can do this at any time just by clicking that button there. It will take you into turn-based mode. It's good for sneaking past traps, sneaking past people with vision cones and things like that, but it will freeze the entire world as if you were in combat. But as you can see here, if we go to jump, I can use the shortcut of Z, which is what it is by default. You can see in the little blue bar down here is actually going down. And the reason, this is my movement bar. So this is how far I can move in one round. 30 feet. If I jump, it will take some of my movement, but generally speaking, jumping is always going to take less movement than the distance you jump. So should we jump and then we walk, we got all the way here in one round, whereas we could only get to about here ordinarily. So jumping will just allow you to jump. Shoving, on the other hand, allows you to push people. It doesn't do any damage. However, there are obviously very useful ways you can use this, like pushing people off cliffs, for example. I'm not going to do that right now, but pushing has a few utilities. For starters, you can push people off the edge of cliffs. Secondly, you can also push a sleeping ally to wake them up because it does no damage. So if they've been magically put to sleep or something, you can just run up to them and shove them, and it'll wake them up, which is always nice. Next, we have dip, which we can come over here to show off. What you do is you dip your weapon into a surface, whether it's fire or poison, and then for a couple of turns, you do additional damage based on that type. So let's dip her mace in this fire. And you can see now, if we hover over her mace, it does 1d6 plus 1. That's her normal attack damage, but it's also doing an additional d4 of fire damage. So it's just doing more damage. A few things of note here is if you have a candle, you can actually dip with a candle, which is a bit ridiculous. You have to actually light the candle, but you can just add fire damage to your weapon, and you can carry the candle, so you know. It just kind of works. And then we have C is the shortcut for sneaking. It's also worth noting that if you go shift, it will show you all the information you need to know about sneaking without actually necessarily taking you into the snake. So you can see the little sun icon here. This is showing how much light you're in. If out here we're in full sunlight, it means it's very easy for people to see us. Here we're in half sunlight. And to get into total darkness, Gale, you want to give me a fog cloud, buddy? Thanks. If we walk in here, I can't see, obviously, because it's a fog cloud, but if I stealth, we're in full darkness here. So no one knows we're here. And obviously, the darker it is, the harder it is for you to be detected while you're sneaking. And as I said, holding shift will show you all this information without you actually having to sneak. Also, if you're holding shift and you sneak, it will sneak your entire party, which is good to know. You can make everybody sneak at once. So if you are scared of being caught, shift C is the quickest way to do that. All of these ones that I've just gone over, these ones with a blue background, these are all bonus actions. So in one turn of combat, let's go back into turn-based mode to show this off. You can see here we have an action, a bonus action, our channel divinity, which is class specific, and then we have our spell slots. And this here is cantrips. So in a turn, generally speaking, you can do one action, one bonus action, and you have your 30 feet of movement. Well, there's modifiers on the distance of movement, but generally speaking, most people have 30 feet. So you can do this in any order you want. I can move 10 feet. Sneak, which is my bonus action. I can throw, which is an action. Let me throw this candle. I destroyed my candle, but whatever. And then I still have 20 feet of movement, so I can move another 20 feet. I can do all of that in any order I wish. And we end my turn. It's fine. End turn-based mode. It's fine. But essentially, you can do them in any order you wish. You have an action, bonus action, and a movement. And that's what you can do per turn. So these are all bonus actions. Some spells are also bonus actions. I can give an example here with my Cleric. Healing Word. You see down the very bottom of the spell, it shows you that it is a bonus action. If you want to know all the things that you can do per action or bonus action, you can just click these at the top. You click action, it shows you all of your actions. If you click bonus action, it will show you all the things you can do as a bonus action. And same thing with your class-specific thing, Channel Divinity, it'll show you my Channel Divinities. My spells, it will show me all my level 1 spells, it'll show me all my cantrips. So Throw lets you pick up items and throw them. It also allows you to pick up people and throw them if they're halflings or gnomes. They're very throwable. You can throw something, it'll do a chunk of damage. The higher you throw it from, the more damage it'll do. But there are also certain weapons, as this hand axe I just threw. See down the bottom, it has the thrown aspect. What this means is that rather than just doing the base damage of whatever it would do, usually 1 damage, if you throw like a rock or something, it'll just do 1 damage. It's called an improvised weapon. But if you throw a hand axe, because it has the thrown property, it will do its full damage on a throw. So it will do 1d6 plus 3. So you can just yeet an axe at somebody, and it will do the full damage of the axe. So that is what throwing is, and that is X by default to be able to throw something. And if you hit it, it will show you all the items. You can filter these items down here. You can go throwing weapons, you can go grenades and potions, or just anything. You can throw literally anything. It is worth noting you can also throw potions. And they will smash and have their effect. So I just healed myself. Next up we have improvised weapon. Is there an improvised weapon around me? There's some boxes down here, these will work. Improvised weapon attack. I can use this and smack someone with it. And he dodged it, thankfully. It meant that I don't have to heal him. So if there's shit on the ground and you don't have your weapons for whatever reason, you can just pick something up and hit someone with it. That's what improvised weapon attack is. Next, we have help. So this one I can just read the description and it gives a pretty good indication of what it is. It removes certain conditions such as burning, downed, ensnared, entangled, enwebbed, prone, and sleeping. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory except for downed. Downed is when you're unconscious. So if you fall to 0 hit points, you'll fall unconscious, and then every turn you'll roll a death saving throw. What this means is essentially you're rolling a constitution saving throw, and you have to get above a 10. If you get above a 10, it is a success. If you get below 10, it is a failure. 3 failures and your character dies. There are ways to actually bring them back. There are resurrection scrolls, or revivify scrolls in this game, technically, that will get your player back from death. And there's a couple other ways of bringing them back as well, but I won't go into that for spoiler reasons. But they will die. If, however, they get 3 successes, they will stabilize. You can heal them, or you can use the help action, and that will bring them back up at 1 HP, either way. Next, we have dash. What this does, go back in turn-based mode to show it off. If we use the dash action, my normal 30 feet of movement is now 60. So it doubles the amount of movement speed you have at the cost of using your action. That is what dash does. And then finally, we have disengage. What this does is if you are standing in melee range of somebody and you try and run away from them, they will get an attack of opportunity. What this means is as you're running away, they will be able to swipe their weapon at you and try and hit you. Disengage will allow you to spend your action. So if I'm standing next to somebody and they have a big weapon and I'm scared of, I can spend my action and disengage, and they cannot get an attack of opportunity against me, and I can just run away. Speaking of attacks of opportunity, it brings me into the last thing that you can do on... I was going to say on your turn, but that's technically incorrect. One thing you can do extra in a round of combat, which is a reaction. So the way reactions work, they don't actually work the same way in the full game as they do in early access, so it's a bit harder for me to show you. But an attack of opportunity is something that you would call a reaction. It is something that you can do on someone else's turn, usually triggered by something they do. For instance, an attack of opportunity is the most simple one. If they are in melee range of you and they run away, you can hit them with your sword. What that does is takes your reaction. So you only have 1 reaction per turn of combat. So if you have your turn, all the way up until it's your turn again, you have a chance to use a reaction. There are a bunch of different reactions in the game. I won't go into them now. But the way that it's set up in Larian is the way that Larian has set it up in the full game is that you can open up a list of all your reactions, and you can set, I want this reaction to trigger when this happens. There's a spell that you can get in the game called Counterspell. What that will do is, if a spellcaster casts a spell, you can set up a reaction to, when spellcaster casts a spell, ask me if I want to counterspell it. So if there's a spellcaster about to cast a fireball, it'll pop up with a little thing saying, do you want to dispel this? You can click yes, and you'll dispel the fireball, and they won't be able to shoot you with the fireball. Things like that, right? It's a really cool system. It's hard to show off because it's not currently in early access. Well, it sort of is, but it's not implemented in the same way they're doing it in the full release. But that is the last thing that you can do on your turn. But the last thing we want to talk about is concentration. Do I have a I do have a concentration spell. Let's go guidance. So this lasts for 10 turns, but it is also concentration. What this means is let's guide Gale. So Gale has guidance. You can see down this bottom left-hand side, I am concentrating, and it also shows you on the character panel, I am concentrating on guidance. Means if I get hit, there's a chance that I will lose this concentration. And I can cast my other spells here, like I can use Sacred Flame, I can shoot people with magic, I can do all these other things. The only other thing I can't do is cast another concentration spell. So let's go resistance, for instance. Let's put resistance on Asterion. This will take away the guidance I have on Gale. Concentration resistance, he's resistant, and you can see that my other spell is dispelled. So you can only have one concentration spell up at a time, and you have a chance of losing concentration if you are hit in combat. So that is worth knowing as well. Alright everybody, so I will be now cutting to an actual example of fighting. If you don't want to have any spoilers whatsoever, again, it is very, very early in Act 1, so it's not a huge spoiler, but there will be actual gameplay from the very, very start of the game. So if you aren't interested in that, thank you for watching, I'll see you next time. Subscribe, like, all that kind of jazz. But for everybody else, we'll be taking it over to a live gameplay thing where I'll try and show off as many of the mechanics as I can in an actual gameplay sense. But again, if you are leaving now, thanks for watching, see you again, and I'll cut over. Alright everybody, so we are back just outside the chapel. This is very, very close to the start of the game. You actually, after the tutorial, you actually start the game just down this hill, so you just walk up and around this hill. This is where we are. So it's very early in the game, although I've done some other stuff just to get up to level 3 so I can show off a bit more. I want to show all the ways you can kind of get around this encounter, which will give you an idea of kind of the choices and consequences in the game, and also how they interact with each other. Also, it'll be a good example to show off combat as well.
You're both twice as tall as me, but have half the bloody backbone.
But we don't know what that thing even is. And what about the crypt?
I'm telling you, it's a ship. And the crypt can wait. Mari and Barton have been trying to break in for days. Now we... Stop! Got ourselves competition already. That's our ship.
Alright, so as you can see, we have a dialogue option here. You can simply say, I mean no harm, just looking around, that will just continue the dialogue. We have a persuasion as deception, or a berserker intimidate, which is kind of great. So these two here are likely going to be for pretty much all characters. The ship is full of monsters, I wouldn't go near it. I think the ship has an invasion force, run while you can. So that both of those are going to be based on your persuasion roll or your deception roll. I am a barbarian who is a berserker. Violence is both means and ends. You follow the path of untrampled fury, slick with blood as you trill in the chaos of battle, heedless to your own well-being. So I have an intimidation roll with advantage, and I have +4 because I'm proficient and I have charisma. I'm just going to do this because I've never seen this before. Mine! Alright, so we are doing a roll here. So as you can see, we have advantage, so we're rolling 2, and we're going to take the greater one. We have a bonus from our charisma, we have a bonus from our intimidation roll, and we can also add another bonus. Because Shadowheart here, she is in my party, she has the cantrip guidance. She can bestow a d4 on anything, and it allows you to add these while you're in conversation. So I think I've probably got this pretty good. It's a DC of 10 and 2 for... I have like 5 by default, so unless both of these roll under 5, I think I'm probably alright. I'm pretty good. It's 26 to get a 10. So the difficulty class there is 10. I needed at least 10 to get it. I got 26.
Well, in that case, come on you lot. No point in getting killed. Second worm gets the cheese and all.
Second mouse gets the cheese, no?
Nobody's getting any damn cheese. Now move it!
So, we've just scared them the fuck off.
You're more cunning than you look. I thought we had a fight on our hands.
There you go. So yeah, I just told them to fuck off, this is mine. And they listened, they ran away. So we can go further down here, this is actually a locked door. I'll show off a bit more of the dialogue system in here as well.
Thank you, Gimblebook. Everything all right out there?
So, we can say he ran off, your friends abandoned you. We can do a performance, try and impersonate Gimblebook. Or we can do deception. Gimblebook triggered some trap, he needs help now. All of these are possible things we can do. I actually have a pretty good chance of performance and deception on this character. But let's just go with the regular thing now rather than actually rolling a check. Gimblebook ran, your friends abandoned you.
I always were a bit soft. But I've got plenty of friends who ain't soft. Come in here and you can meet them.
He didn't unlock the door for us. So, a couple of ways we can do this. One, we could unlock the door. Asterion is pretty adept at unlocking the door. We can just right click it and lockpick the door. So that's something we can do. Alternatively,
how much further can I go?
You notice this ground here is actually quite cracked. So, Asterion is also pretty good at this. Let's use your bow. Shoot this thing up here.
Never a dull moment.
So we can jump down there. And actually just get into the area by doing that. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to show the next area yet.
Ready.
I want to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible. So that there is possible ways to get into this place. Additionally, there's a path down this side which I haven't really explored. But if we go down here...
That might be worth a look.
Someone made a perception check there, by the way. There's a little trapdoor here that is also locked. And by the same metric, we could unlock it with Asterion. It doesn't have health, so we can't blow it up. There are some doors you can actually destroy, and you'll know you can destroy them because they have health. Generally, it's not doors that go between areas, because there is a loading screen to go into the next area. But this will take us down into the chapel we're trying to get into as well. So there's multiple ways to get into the places you want to go. But for now, we're going to actually reload that save and just do a fight at the chapel, as I named the save. Alright, so we're back. So this time, we're planning on attacking them. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to I'm going to separate my team. You can do this just by clicking their portrait and pulling them off. You can see like this, we can separate them all totally. A couple of things I want to do. Now, granted, you're not going to be doing this most of the time, but if you see a fight coming up, like if you kind of pan over here and you go, these guys look like bandits. I know for a fact they are. You can come around here. Let me do some sneaky stuff, shall we? Alright, we're back. So I just walked around. There is a path around the other way. But apparently Asterion is pretty weak, so he can't actually make this jump. But... let's go into sneaky mode. Double-clicking on the portrait will allow them to go to specific places. I'm gonna sneak here and head up this way. And we have Shadowheart and Tav. I'm pretty comfortable
Looking ahead.
having both of these guys walk straight in.
You're both twice as tall as me, but have half the bloody backbone.
But we don't know what that
Same
thing
dialogue, as you
even
might
is.
expect. I reloaded the
And what
safe.
about the crypt?
I'm telling you, it's a ship. And the crypt can wait. Mari and Barton have been trying to break in for days. Now we... Stop! Got ourselves competition already. That's our ship.
Nah, I think it's my ship. I'm going to attack him. I actually think that guy fully missed Asterion. Indeed he did. Asterion, they saw Gale, because Gale is not particularly stealthy. However, Asterion is actually still out of combat, because these guys are bad at what they do. Let me just sneak up behind here and initiate with a sneak attack, shall we? Damn! Okay then, well that's a critical hit. So a critical hit, well, I guess I get to show that off immediately. Critical hits will double all of the dice you roll. Let me jump to the actual character the zone is. So if you get a critical hit, if you would ordinarily roll 1d6, for instance, you will instead roll 2d6. and then add your modifiers afterwards. So it's quite powerful. Alright, let's Frenzied Rage, shall we? So I'm now all angry. I have a fair amount of movement, so let me run up to... You have 24 health, you have 22 health. Let's just run up here. And fuck it, let's Reckless Attack, shall we? And end my turn. Gale is no longer stealthing, I don't believe. No, he's not. But we can probably do some useful things here, such as... Move up here. I used too much of my movement. That's unfortunate. Well, that's fine. We can Misty Step instead. So Misty Step allows you to reposition pretty well. We will then use Magic Missile at level 1 and attempt to take out the mage. And we did. Mage is out of the picture. So we'll end turn. I am currently in acid. I don't want to run through the acid because that will do damage as we go, so we can do the jump action. It would allow me to get out of the acid. Beautiful. We now have not quite enough Can I get in melee range with this guy? Let's have a look. If you want to see whether you'll have enough range, you can actually go click the attack option, and you'll see here we don't have enough movement. So we can't actually reach for a melee attack, which means I instead think I will go... Mirror Image or Hold Person. My better option in this scenario is to go Mirror Image. Which makes me a bit harder to hit because I have a bunch of illusions around me. I'll also use my movement to get up a bit closer so that next turn I can attack them. So the way that's working, by the way, is every time they take an attack and they miss... Oh! That was a lot of bleeding. Nevertheless, we could do another Reckless Attack. Sure, let's go. And they're going to run up here. As a bonus attack, I can actually use an attack as a bonus action because of my Frenzied Attack. So let's do that. Missed, unfortunately, but we can end my turn. Let me... make myself a little bigger. I'll then attempt to hide. Alright, inflict wounds. Missed, unfortunately. I will try and shove this guy. He's no longer in melee with me. Now my turn. Starian, now your turn. I'll actually get you to jump, buddy. Get into range there. There is actually a little trap on the ground here. You can see these kind of vines on the ground. They will actually entangle you if you walk over the top of them, so you got to be careful there. This guy is in melee range with both my allies, so I can actually sneak attack him. I can't do a lot with my bonus action. I can dash with a bonus action. So, because I'm a rogue, I actually have dash and disengage as bonus actions that I can try. So I will dash here and run up a bit closer. I'm currently bleeding. That's what that effect is, by the way. As you can see here. Where is the actual effect? May not even be showing me. I'm dazed, in fact, which means I'm doing slightly less damage, but it's fine. I can counteract that daze by using a Reckless Attack. So I am now enlarged. So what Gale did when he did that, we will hover over it. My weapon attacks now do an additional d4 more damage. I have advantage on strength checks and strength saving throws, and as you can see, I'm fucking massive. So I've doubled in size. We'll use Reckless Attack, and we got a critical, and that ends the battle. So that showed off a fairly wide variety of things we can do. I've now killed all the people here. I can link us back up again. That's fine. Being linked back up will make the guys kind of try and get to us as best they can. Actually, Gale won't because he is successfully sneaking. If you're successfully sneaking, it'll auto keep you in one spot so you don't run out and get caught.
Here, I hope.
But we've killed these guys, which allows us to loot all of their bodies. The loot works pretty much how you would expect. You can just go up and loot them. But now that we've killed these guys rather than made them run off, let's go down here and see if we can persuade this guy to unlock the door for us.
Like you give a book. Everything all right out there?
So we have a performance. As you can see, if you hover over the actual little square bracketed skill check, it will give you all of your chances. So it'll say it's a d20 roll and it's +2 just from my charisma. So let's attempt to deceive him. Gimblebox triggered some trap. He needs help now. I could add bonuses here, but I don't actually want to because I kind of want to see what happens when I fail the roll is what I want to show. Unfortunately, I have pretty high charisma off base, so we passed. But we'll get to see what happens here.
Oh, I told him it wasn't safe out there. Get inside and I'll rustle up some bandages.
There you go. And so with that, because we successfully did that check, and also I just shrunk because Gale's spell ran out, but he's unlocked the door so we can just enter. It will probably result in a fight because we're going to enter and he's just going to be standing there and going, hey, you're not part of our party. What are you doing here? But there are a bunch of different ways that you can get into this chapel. As you saw there, you can just fight your way through if you prefer, or you can actually convince them to run away so that you can go in there after them. But that is pretty much how all these things work together in Baldur's Gate 3. I think that was a pretty good showcase of all the things I wanted to show. If I'm going through and editing and I find something else, I might add it at the end, but I think I showed off pretty much everything I wanted to show off. How the game choice affects what you can do, even in a very simple area like this. It's kind of like a little side area that doesn't have a whole lot of story significance. It's just a bunch of dudes who are here and they've noticed the ship that we crashed on and they're like, we want to loot it and we also want to loot this dungeon. And we come in and say, well, no, don't. But there are a bunch of ways you can do it. You can sneak in through different entrances. You can come through and just attack them outright. You can convince them to leave by multiple different ways. And I tried to show off as much as I could in the combat. If there's anything I missed, ask down in the comments. I will try and answer them as much as possible. But with that, that's going to be the end of the video. So if you liked the video, please leave a like. If you aren't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching, and I shall see you next time. We're really coming up to the release date here. So I'm currently recording this on the 31st. And the game for me will launch in Australia. It's 1 AM on the 4th, I believe, is the actual release date. So I'll be downloading it then. I'll probably be playing it in the morning. I don't think I'm going to stay up all night playing it. It's just a bad idea when I want to make content for it too. If I wasn't making content, I might just stay up from 1 AM and just play it all. But we'll download it and then we'll play it in the morning. But as I said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I shall see you next time, guys.